Hello and welcome, wonderful people. Today we're going to be looking at covenant, and covenant is a very important topic in CRS, and it's simply an agreement or contract between two parties. Covenant can be between man and man or between God and man. So one of the most famous covenant that we know about is the covenant between God and Abraham. So covenant is a form of agreement, and it is normally signified by something. So let's say God said to Abraham, as for you, you shall keep my covenant, you and your descendants after you throughout generations. This is my covenant, which you shall keep between me and you and your descendants after you. Every male among you shall be circumcised. So the covenant is always signified by something. So, and once you do that, the other person keeps his own part. So in this covenant, what is showing this covenant is actually the circumcision, and it is the commandment from God to Abraham. So once Abraham keeps making sure that every male among his generation is circumcised, God will keep his own part of continuing to bless him. So this account can be seen in Genesis 17:9-10. Now, in a covenant between two equals, there must be an agreement based on conditions and responsibilities. In a covenant between God and man, or between superior and inferior, God being the superior dictates the content of the covenant, while man being the inferior is subject to the conditions imposed upon him. So a covenant is meant to be binding on the parties concerned, a breach of which results in penalties. Okay. So once you hear about covenants, just know that covenant simply means agreement between two parties. But in CRS or in Christian religious knowledge, whenever we're talking about covenant, we're going to be talking about covenant between God and man. And there is always something to signify this. And if man continues to do that, the blessings of the Lord now continues with him. So originally, Abraham with his family lived in Haran, in Mesopotamia, before God called him to leave the country and move to a land he would show him. So as at that time, his name was Abram, meaning exalted father. So Abraham was 75 years old when he was called by God. So this call was with some promise. So covenant always comes with promise. So once you continue to do things that are involved in the covenant, then these promises will continue to affect your life. But once you stop, that means you breached the covenant, then it stops happening. So the promises that God made with Abraham during the covenants are: one, that he would make him a great nation, then he would bless him and make his name great, then he would bless those who bless him and curse those who curse him. And in him, all families of the earth shall be blessed. So these are the various promises that came with that covenant. So if Abraham does everything that God is telling him, then he will get all these promises. So that is how covenants normally work. So Abraham obeyed God and went with his wife Sarai and his nephew Lot. The Lord appeared to him when he got to Shechem and said, "To your descendants I will give this land." So he built an altar there for the Lord. So the Lord appeared to him again when he was 99 years old, charging him to walk before him and be blameless. So at this stage, God announced his intention of making a covenant with Abraham. The basis of this is God promised to multiply Abraham exceedingly. So it was a promise, a covenant, and to be his God forever. So you see, whenever there is a covenant between a superior and an inferior, it is always the superior that dictates the terms of the covenant. So it's God that says everything about the covenant. So your duty as the superior is to just obey your own part of what the superior, who is God, has stated. So once you do that, you get all the promises that he has made. You also get all the blessings. So this circumcision of all males, including slaves, was the sign of covenant. So like I told you, whenever there is a covenant, there is always a sign to signify the covenant. So, and for this case in Abraham, it is the circumcision of all males. Okay, this means that henceforth all males must be circumcised on the 8th day. God threatened to cut off any male not circumcised. So all this took place in Canaan, where Abraham had been directed to go. So another significant aspect of the covenant between Abraham and God was his promise to give Abraham and his descendants the whole land of Canaan, where they now sojourn as inheritance. Okay, so you can see covenant comes with a lot of promises, and once you are able to keep those promises, then you reap the fruits of the covenant. So God also changed Abraham's wife's name from Sarai to Sarah, with a promise to give him a son. So she was 90 years old then. She will be the mother of nations and princes. In all this, Abraham showed amazing faith in God, and God fulfilled his promise, covenant, which, like I said, covenant comes with promises of making Abraham the father of all nations by giving him a son, Isaac, meaning God has made me laugh. And Isaac married Rebekah at the age of 40. Then Isaac's wife gave back to Esau and Jacob. Then from there, Abraham was able to have as many descendants as is recorded in the Bible. Now, it may be important to point out here that both Abraham and God fulfilled their own parts of the covenant. So this is very important. If you want to reap the promises of a covenant, you have to fulfill your own part. So God made him the father of many nations, starting with the birth of his son and successor, Isaac. And Abraham, on his own part, remained faithful to God by circumcising all male children, including himself, believing God and making sacrifices to him. Okay? So this is where we're going to be stopping. Thank you. God bless you.